Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. Another book review on this big thick book, ISIS Unveiled. And a lot of us are aware of the ISIS threat in the Middle East, Al-Qaeda, and so much more. Syria under siege and attack, after all the other countries in the Middle East have been attacked and destroyed, practically, after 9/11. Series 100, Part 3, and this topic, from the many topics that are in H P Blavatsky's book, will be on sorcery. What is sorcery? It's also known as witchcraft. I've discovered it's also spiritualism. What is spiritualism? Well, it's communicating with, controlling, getting information from the past, the present, the future, from some spiritual, invisible entities. Spiritualism. Even in the Bible, Jesus is said to have cast out unclean spirits. So who are the spirits that H P Blavatsky is communicating with? Also called masters, and masters were called angels. And what kind of information were they giving her? So this topic out of this book will be on sorcery and spiritualism, and I call it witchcraft. So I thought I would take a deep look at this book because when I did Series 200, and I made Part 1 and Part 2 on this book, The Personal Memoirs of H P Blavatsky by Mary Neff, N-E-F-F, and H P Blavatsky in her letters to her relatives and to business associations and partners admitted that they were entities possessing her body or coming to her in visions and trances, in dreams, in voices audible, who were giving her the information, and she worshiped these masters who were commanding her what to do. Move from Europe to New York, and when she was finished, she left the United States once and for all and moved to India, where apparently a lot of these masters have a homeland in the Himalayan mountains or Tibet, into meditation and yoga. Funny how the dots connect, the things that are popular today. And they talk negatively about Christianity, French Revolution. I've discovered that World War I and World War II and 9/11 were controlled and caused by these secret societies, these secret controllers of our world. The manipulators is another good word. So I still have to read some more from this book. I'm almost finished, and maybe make another video or two. But The Personal Memoirs of H P Blavatsky, written in 1937, is a fascinating book. And she wrote ISIS Unveiled in 1887-88. Personal Memoirs was in 1937. This was 1887-88. This is volume 2. That surprised me. Sometimes I don't really know all about the books I'm reading from. So apparently there's another whole volume this thick with a ton of material. I'll have to try to find it. So I was thinking, what I'm about to read is hugely disturbing. And a lot of people just might find it unbelievable. But if you are a thinking person who will admit the reality around yourself, including me, I have to admit it to myself, because it is unbelievable and disturbing what I'm about to read. But do people really believe? For example, the TV program Hogan's Heroes. Do people really believe that predominantly the Germans were that stupid, like Klink and Schultz? Do people believe that? And apparently, Germany was under siege, attacked, and destroyed because they were much superior in technical abilities and knowledge, and were becoming a financial threat in Europe against the kingdom where the sun never sets, i.e. Britain, which was called the United Kingdom, controlling properties from China and India and all over the world. Even the United States declared independence from Britain. So the rising star Germany was a threat to the kingdom empire of Britain. And why shouldn't Germany have risen like a rocket going up, expanding its empire? For a couple reasons. It's in the heart of the continent with lots of lakes and oceans and lands around it, minerals, whereas Britain is an island. So there was a competitive edge there for the rising Germany. Number two, Germany was the place of refuge for the fleeing Jewish people who were fleeing Russia. And these Jewish intellectuals brought to Germany a lot of assistance in its rise to technological and intelligent growth. So there are lots of reasons, and there are certain components to the story about World War I that people really don't know. Why was World War I fought? And it was because the battle between the Britons and the Germans, and it really wasn't the Germans who were on the offensive, it was the British. They had to bring it down, and the Britons were losing the war. But the elite Jewish people around the world who aspired towards Zionism came up with what they call a brilliant idea and said to the British, you don't have to lose the war. We control the President of the United States, President Wilson. We can bring the United States into the war. We control the banking system. And at that time, 6 months earlier, they had taken over the USA banking system in 1913, December. Remember, World War I started in June. So it was a methodical plan. They had to take over the USA politicians and the money supply. And in my previous videos, I've explained for 40 or 50 years, these Illuminati, Freemasonic, and other secret society and Zionist Jewish people, these secret cabals that control our world, had aspired to retake control of the USA money supply, but they couldn't, and a couple USA presidents were killed and a couple were poisoned, so it was something they were seeking seriously. And prior to World War I, remember, was a revolution in France, the French Revolution, which was horrific, and caused by these same people from the videos I've made. So there we go back to Hogan's Heroes. Do people really believe that's how the Germans were? The evidence indicates niet. That means not in German. And again, what about I Dream of Jeannie, where she can go in the bottle with the astronaut Nelson? Does anybody believe that magic or those kinds of things are real, or is it all being ridiculed? Like all the cartoons kids watch. What about Bewitched? Do people believe in witchcraft, or has it all been ridiculed like Hogan's Heroes? The Monsters, the Addams Family, so much more. The Simpsons with the 911 clock in the background all the time, and all kinds of pre-prophesized events they show on the Simpsons that later on actually happen, like the Illuminati card game. What are we to believe? So when I read from this, think about that. And when I read from this, whether you want to believe in evil or not, and some of the things I'm going to talk about, nobody can deny that they wanted to put up the Archway of Baal, also called the Archway of Palmyra or Titus. An archway is a door. In New York and London, later on through UNESCO, I found out they were putting 1,000 of these archways all around the world, of UNESCO from the United Nations. Why were they putting these archways, i.e. portals, all over the world, within hieroglyphics or incantations embedded in the post? When I read from this, it might make sense. What about the Eurovision, like the American Idol program, where Conchita Wurst wins the contest with the face like Jesus and the body like a woman in a silky dress singing the song The Phoenix Rising with the words, "You can't stop us." The big goat on the Hoover Dam, the largest projection ever. The big projection on the Empire State Building. Shiva, Kali, the goddesses of destruction, again involving India. The ceremony for CERN, that was weird. The ceremony for the mountain tunnel opening in the Swiss Alps, that was definitely demonic. Emmys, Grammys, Super Bowl halftime shows, Indiana Jones movies, and so much more. Hunger Games, Divergent, and cell phone towers going up every mile, chemicals dumped in the sky, President Donald Trump recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, something they have sought for hundreds of years. They had to bring us World War I, World War II, French Revolution, 9/11, and so much more destruction to get to this point. They are there now. They must be giddy with glee, thinking that they have won this battle between this spiritualism, Kabbalism, sorcery, and the efforts to destroy Christianity, take away Christmas, and give us this pansexual, transgender, rainbow agenda, New Age religion, one world government, globalism. It's all plain to see. So I'm going to read from this book, and I do say some of it is disturbing, and you may want to not know this stuff. But with all those symbols that we have seen in the newspapers, like the Archway of Baal, even that statue of the devil with a child under each arm, even with his horns and everything, they wanted to put that on a state building in Oklahoma. Their citizens rightly rejected that, so they moved it to Detroit, and apparently had a big opening ceremony in a private location. The statue was in the street. People were celebrating. It looked like a Halloween festival. Coincidence? So this is chapter 2, page 55. One undertakes by scales of miles to tell the bounds and dimensions and extent of hell, where bloated souls in smoky durance hung, like a Westphalia gammon or a neat's tongue, to be redeemed with masses and a song. And this is J. Olham, Satires upon the Jesuits. Going to be saying things, and you got to put two and two together. The Jesuits. Who were the Jesuits? I made videos on the Jesuits. The current Pope is a Jesuit. They're supposed to be the negative military arm of the Vatican, versus the white Pope, which is the one we normally see, and then the Jesuit leader would be the black Pope, and apparently the black Pope holds the real power. Why would they put the black Pope in charge of the Vatican at this point in time? And then Francis, the Jesuit Pope that replaced the other Pope who did not die, weirdly enough in that case, sent a video out. I put this in my video quite a while ago. A video to all the church leaders. There's no reason why we should be separate any longer. We should all unite. What is he talking about? But you are more inhuman, more inexorable, 10 times more than tigers of Hysenia, and that would be Shakespeare, King Henry VI. Warwick, O hark ye, sirs, because she is a maid. Spare for no faggots, let there be in Enu. Place barrels of pitch upon the fatal stake, so her torture may be shortened. Shakespeare, King Henry VI. In that famous work of Bodin, Bodin, on sorcery, famous work. There goes my phone, my day job. In that famous work of Bodin on sorcery, a frightful story is told about Catherine of Medici. The author was a learned publicist who, during 20 years of his life, collected authentic documents from the archives of nearly every important city of France to make up a complete work on sorcery, magic, and the power of various demons. So let's call it checking the historic newspapers, like here in the United States. If you go back and check out the newspapers prior to World War I and during World War I and World War II and World War III, I mean, you would know what was in the news back then. So this guy was checking all the archives of nearly every important city. There goes my phone again. So this one publicist, this writer, was going through the archives of every important city of France to make up a complete work on sorcery, magic, and the power of various demons. So that sounds like a reasonable, reliable source of information. You think? To use an expression of Eliphas Levi, his book offers a most remarkable collection of the bloody and hideous facts involving acts of revolting superstition, arrest, and executions of stupid ferocity. Burn every body, the Inquisition seemed to say. God will easily sort out his own. Poor fools, hysterical women, and idiots were roasted alive without mercy for the crime of magic. So where are we today? I do know, if you go check on the internet, apparently the government has purchased 30,000 guillotines in the USA. And artificial intelligence systems are pretty much monitoring we the people 24/7, everything we do, credit card activity, books you buy, things you watch on the internet, things you say on your phone. They were all able to get all this passed the legislature because they do gun shootings, false flags, bombings, 911, and so much more. Threat of national security. They have FEMA camps. So it says here, poor fools, hysterical women, and idiots were roasted alive. And I'm aware that the government has purchased 30,000 guillotines and made FEMA camps and so much more for the crime of magic. So these people were accused of magic. And during the Inquisition, witch hunts and all that, a lot of people were killed. A big question is, which people? And why did they kill them? What about the people who were really controlling our world, who are into sorcery, witchcraft, the Kabbalah, etc.? Secret mystery religion of the secret societies. But at the same time, how many great culprits escaped this unjust and sanguinary justice? So were selected people picked out to be burned at the stake or beheaded or tortured. This is what Bodin makes us fully appreciate. Kathleen, the pious Christian, who has so well deserved in the eyes of the Church of Christ for the atrocities and never to be forgotten massacre of St. Bartholomew's Day. The Queen Catherine kept in her service, getting off to a poor start in my speaking this afternoon, kept in her service, employment, an apostate Jacobin priest. So I looked up what a Jacobin priest was. He was well versed in the black art. So fully patronized by the Medici family, he had won the gratitude and protection of this pious mistress by his unparalleled skill in killing people at a distance. The process has been described over and over again, and we scarcely need to repeat it. So apparently he was using some kind of voodoo. Charles, her husband, was lying sick of an incurable disease. The Queen Mother, who had everything to lose in case of his death, resorted to necromancy, magic, the occult, and consulted the oracle of the bleeding head. The oracle of a bleeding head. So that would be some kind of statue of a head that was bleeding. This infernal operation required the decapitation of a child who must be possessed of great beauty and purity. So apparently they have some kind of ritual where they kill a child or a human, and the decapitated head starts talking. Told you, this information is fairly horrific. But I think, like the Bewitched program or Hogan's Heroes, I think the truth of reality is kept hidden from we the people. Apparently with all the symbolism I mentioned earlier, the evil forces are real. Some kind of serpent reptilian involving gray aliens. Remote viewing, the government has people that go into trances or controlled mesmerism, hypnotism, leave their bodies, and so much more. I've made many videos on these topics, trying to find out WTH, what the heck is going on. So the child had to be processed in this ritual. He had been prepared in secret for his first communion by the chaplain of the palace, who was apprised of the plot, and at midnight on the appointed day, in the chamber of the sick man, and in the presence of Catherine and a few of her confederates, the devil's mass was celebrated. Let us give the rest of the story as we find it in one of Levi's works. Guess I'll have to get Levi's book. At this mass, celebrated before the image of the demon, so they had an image of the devil, like the statue of the devil with two children under him, that they were putting in the state building in Oklahoma, wound up in Detroit. Before the image of the demon, having under his feet a reversed cross, the sorcerer consecrated 2 wafers. If you go to Catholic Church, you get the body and blood of Jesus, the bread and the wine. And I grew up Catholic, and you get the white little round wafer. So the 2 wafers, one black and one white. I never heard of a black wafer. I am aware that the Jews have been accused throughout the past couple thousand years of some blood Passover ritual ceremony where they have to get the blood of a non-Jew, a Christian, and mix it with some kind of bread. So they have these wafers or pieces of bread for their rituals, and they were caught at this numerous times, sacrificing, bleeding a young child. So there's more going on here, and that would not include all Jewish people, of course, but the ones who were into the Kabbalah, which in the encyclopedia it admits that was historically the Kabbalah was part of the religious culture of many Jews. These are the Zionist Jews who are vying for a Jewish utopia. I made a book on Robert Williams' book about the book, The Jewish Utopia, the Ultimate World Order. So I'm able to connect these dots over and over again. So they had the black and white wafer. They had the child get and whom they brought clothed as for a baptism, who was murdered upon the very steps of the altar immediately after his communion. So the little child received communion, the white wafer, the body of Christ. And he was, his head separated from the trunk by a single blow, was placed all palpitating upon the great black wafer that covered the bottom of the patern, and then placed upon a table where some mystical lamps were burning, mysterious lamps were burning. The exorcism then began, and the demon was charged to pronounce an oracle and to reply by the mouth of his head to a secret question that the king dared not speak aloud, and that had been confided to no one. Then a feeble voice, a little child's voice, a strange voice, which had nothing of human character about it, made itself audible in this poor little martyr's head. So the little child's head was talking, something like a voice when you see a movie where somebody is under possession of an evil demon and they crack it out like a cranky old witch. The sorcery availed nothing. The king died, and Catherine remained the faithful daughter of Rome. How strange that demonosos, some names are hard to say for me, who makes such free use of Boden's materials to construct his formidable indictment against spiritualists and other sorcerers, should have overlooked this interesting episode. So Desmodosos was probably one of the people persecuting and dictating who would be burnt at the stake or beheaded or tortured. Somebody just accusing people of witchcraft during the Inquisition. So why didn't he go after these people, and instead of all these other people who were accused of sorcery? That's what the point of this page is. Why were these well-known people usually never arrested or persecuted or murdered, killed? It is a well-attested fact that Pope Sylvester II was publicly accused by Cardinal Beno of being a sorcerer and an enchanter. Pope Sylvester II being accused by a cardinal of being a sorcerer and an enchanter. The brazen oracle head made by His Holiness was of the same kind as the one fabricated by Albertus Magnus. The latter was smashed to pieces by Thomas Aquinas, not because it was the work of or inhabited by a demon, but because the spook, who was fixed inside the mesmeric power, talked incessantly, and his verbiage prevented the eloquent sate from working on his mathematical problems. So famous Thomas Aquinas destroyed the statue of the speaking head because they just continued to babble on and babble on and babble on, and he couldn't work out his mathematical problems. These heads and other talking statues, trophies of the magical skill of monks and bishops, were facsimiles of the animated gods of the ancient temples. So now I'm reminded of King Solomon's temple that was built to house the Ark of the Covenant, that box with the two cherubim on top, who apparently was possessed by some kind of being who was giving Moses and other people instructions, including to go to the Middle East and murder all the Canaanites, and said that they were the chosen people, and that was going to be their holy land. And that creates an OMG moment when we know that President Donald Trump just recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Oh my, something's going on. The accusations against the Pope was proved at the time. It was also demonstrated that he was constantly attended by demons or spirits. In the preceding chapter, we have mentioned Benedict 9, John 20, and the 6th and the 7th Gregory, who were all known as magicians. So these popes of the past were known as magicians. And a lot of them, most of the magicians, or if not all of them, most of them were Jewish people who practiced the Kabbalah. A lot of kings and queens and elites all over the world had their Jewish doctors or magicians. And that's FYI. So what is the Kabbalah? What does it have to do with all these satanic rituals and symbols we see everywhere? The latter pope, moreover, was the famous Hildebrand, who is said to have been so expert at shaking lightning out of his sleeve, an expression which makes the venerable spiritualist writer, Mr. Hewitt, think that it was the origin of the celebrated thunder of the Vatican. So when we did get a new pope, I remember in the news, lightning struck the Vatican. I think that day. Coincidences? I do also know this. I was watching a video. There was a discussion. If I were making this video in maybe Canada, maybe even California now, Switzerland, Germany, Austria, Israel, you could be arrested and imprisoned because speaking negatively about any of these cultures or peoples is being called a hate crime. They are passing legislation, and they do not want this information disseminated to the public. There is a serious effort, if it's not already mostly accomplished, and to eliminate Christianity from the memory of mankind. Strangely enough, also in the news, I was watching a video with President Donald Trump saying that he was announcing at the G7 summit going on right now, that he told all the world's leaders that the current condition of a lopsided balance sheet could not exist. Just like if you had your checkbook and you were balancing it and it was just in the red, you were losing tons of money. Eventually you'd have your house foreclosed and your vehicle taken away. Your balance sheet. So if you're spending much more than what you're making, eventually you're going to go into the red. Well, apparently the United States, according to President Donald Trump, is like, hundreds of billions, maybe $1 trillion in the negative on the balance sheet. And apparently, previous presidents were supporting this with free trade acts. And the other leaders of other countries, according to President Donald Trump, seem to acknowledge that they know this. They've been using the United States as a piggy bank. And they can't even believe that we, the people, would allow this to happen. To allow our own destruction of our country. And they, of course, are using the USA right now as the piggy bank, even since 2008 and even before, especially Israel. During the creation of Israel from 46 to the 70s, it was reported that Israel got $90 billion, where during that same 20 plus years, 46, 56, 66, 24 years, 25 years, the rest of the world during that same period didn't get $90 billion. But Israel got $90 billion. Remember, they controlled our banking system since 1913. So anyways, President Donald Trump said that his feeling was, and sense was, that the leaders of the rest of the world were kind of smiling and smirking, knowing that they were sucking so much money out of the USA with all these trade agreements, so that the United States balance sheet was totally lopsided, And President Donald Trump said he wanted to fix that. And I guess that would mean all those other countries of the world would not get all that money, and easily probably disturb and upset other countries. And according to Albert Pike in 1888, 1887, back then, prophesied 3 world wars to bring about this global new world order. So maybe President Donald Trump is doing his job to create the anger and the hatred of the U.S. to bring about the World War III, or the United States destruction. Even Prime Minister Sharon of Israel, please look these things up, I say, said in a heated argument in his Congress, "Don't worry about America. We control America, and the Americans know it." And the current Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, please look up what he said in Fink's Bar. Finks, bar. They're going to make the United States into a third world country. So knowing that these people who are leaders of nations all over the world belong to these secret societies, and I'm reading this material of some kind of mystery religion that they're into, with all the symbolism we've seen on Illuminati card games and Emmys and Grammys and TV programming, even the show Gotham or the show Lucifer. It's just never ending. So you have to put all this together. So what are we to believe? We do know, most of us, that they do control the USA money supply. They have crashed the system 8 or 9, 10 times since 1913. The magical achievements of the Bishop of Restebon and those of the angelic doctor, Thomas Aquinas, are too well known to repudiation. But we may explain further how the illusions of the former were produced. If the Catholic bishop was so clever in making people believe in a bitter winter night that they were enjoying the delights of a splendid summer day, and caused the icicles hanging from the trees in the garden to seem like so many tropical fruits, the Hindu magicians also practice such biological powers unto this very day. And remember, Helena Blavatsky wrote this book in 1887, 1888. So the Hindu magicians also practice such biological powers unto this very day, and claim the assistance of neither God nor devil. So you got these magicians doing these things and claiming that it wasn't God or the devil. Such miracles are all produced by the same human power that is inherent in every man if he only knew how to develop it. So this is what Helena Blavatsky was writing, that these powers to do these things is inherent in every man if he only knew how to develop it. And all these secret societies have initiates, and they initiate them into these mystery religion, these secret societies. They call them illuminated, Illuminati, Freemasons, high level, not low level, Rosicrucians, Kabbalists, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, Knights of the Garter, like the royal family, Club of Rome, Bohemian Grove, Bilderberger Group. Apparently in the news, the Bilderberger group people recently met with the Pope, the Black Pope, the Jesuit. Some videos are indicating that these people are running frantic, trying to stop the awakening of the human people. All right, moving along. So what about the French Revolution, a period of time called the Reformation? About the time of the Reformation, the study of alchemy and magic had become so prevalent among the clergy as to produce a great scandal. So the church was involved in magic. And I admit that's likely true. I am aware that the Catholic Church destroyed the Library of Alexandria over there in Turkey or Greece, wherever it was. I think Greece. Destroying historical records. And even during the time of the explorers going to Central America, South America, they would make a beeline for the Shama's witch doctor's hut and get all his artifacts, kill him, and then start killing the natives and stealing the gold. These were people coming out of controlled by kings and queens in the Vatican. Cardinal Wolsey was openly accused before the court and the Privy Council of Confederacy with a man named Wood, a sorcerer who said that my Lord Cardinal has such a range that whatsoever he asked of the king's grace, that he had it. Adding that Master Cromwell, when he was a servant in my Lord Cardinal's house. So apparently these he would ask for things and he would get them. And he read many books, especially the book on Salomon, and studied metals and what virtues they had on the canon of the Salomon. So what do certain metals or crystal jewels have? What kind of powers do they have? This case, with several others equally curious, is to be found among the Cromwell papers in the record office of the Rolls House. So just different examples here of the elites being into sorcery, witchcraft, but not being persecuted. But so many others were arrested, burned at the stake, beheaded, imprisoned, tortured. This was a crazy time at the latter part of the 1700s, 1798, 1797. And if history repeats itself, and back then they were using guillotines, I have pictures of all this, and I'm thinking about the guillotines the U.S. government has ordered, according to some truck drivers and other peoples. You can find the videos on YouTube. It just makes me think that some insane situation is going to occur again. And again, the old adage is, history repeats itself. So if we don't wake up, which is one reason I make these videos, we need to wake up. Ignorance is not bliss, and trying to ignore this situation is not going to be beneficial to the United States or the world. A priest named William Stapleton was arrested as a conjurer during the reign of Henry VIII, and on account of his adventures is still preserved in the Rolls House records. The Sicilian priest, whom Belavanto Sassini calls a necromancer. So one form of necromancy is throwing some stones on the ground and seeing how they fall. And of course tarot cards, and also the bones of a chicken, or spilling the guts of a human onto the ground and seeing how they fall. Apparently people can read that as some kind of prophecy. And then we think about the Illuminati cards that seem to depict the Twin Towers falling down and so many other events. Who are these people? So the Sicilian priest, Sassini, calls a necromancer. The Sicilian priest, whom Benavente Sassini calls a necromancer, became famous through his successful conjurations and was never molested. So the point of some of the material in this book is a lot of these elite people who were into this sorcery were not molested or arrested. The remarkable adventure of Sassini with him in the Colosseum. So the guy's in a Colosseum, like an arena, like a football-sized arena, where the priest conjured up a whole host of devils, is well known to the reading public. The subsequent meeting of Cellini with his mistress, as predicted and brought about by the conjurer, at the precise time fixed by him, is to be considered as a matter of course, a curious coincidence. So apparently this conjurer prophesied when this leader would meet with his mistress, and lo and behold, it did happen. In the latter part of the 16th century, there was hardly a parish to be found in which the priest did not study magic or alchemy. Now, how many people know this stuff? The practice of exorcism to cast out devils in imitation of Christ, who, by the way, never used exorcism at all. So again, Helen wrote this book at the behest of the command of some kind of beings, whether you want to call them masters or angels. Why were they dictating this material to be dispensed among we the population to Helena Blavatsky, a forerunner of the New Age material? Led the clergy to devote themselves openly to sacred magic in contradiction to black art, and to which latter crime was accused all those who were neither priests nor monks. So we hear a lot about sacred sex and pedophilia and transgenderism and Aleister Crowley. Coincidences? The occult knowledge gleaned by the Roman Church from the once fat fields of theurgy, she seducedly guarded for her own use. So the church, the Roman Church, seditiously guarded for her own use occult knowledge, and sent to the stake only those practitioners who poached. So I guess the church didn't want anybody else practicing the occult knowledge. On her lands with the Scientia Centennium, and those whose sins could not be concealed by a friar's frock. The proof of it lies in the records of history. In the course only of 15 years between 1580 and 1595, and only in the single province of Lorraine, the President Remigius burned 900 witches. Says Thomas Wright in his Sorcery and Magic, his book Sorcery and Magic. Thomas Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T. It was during those days prolific in ecclesiastical murder, church murder, and unrivaled for cruelty and ferocity, that Jean Bodin wrote. While the Orthodox clergy called forth whole legions of demons through the magical incantations, unmolested by the authorities, provided they held fast to the established dogmas and taught no heresy. So you could bring forth legions of demons, magical incantations, and you would be unmolested by the authorities, provided they held fast to the established dogmas, the rules and controls of the church. And on the other hand, acts of unparalleled atrocity were perpetrated on poor, unfortunate fools. So it was poor, unfortunate fools who had acts of unparalleled atrocities placed on them, burned at the stake, beheaded, imprisoned, tortured. How many people know this? Gabriel Malagrida, an old man of 80, was burnt by these evangelical Jack Ketches in 1761. So I did look up a Jack Ketch, and apparently the guy who pulls the lever on a guillotine, or pulls the lever or sets fire to the wood around a person, the executioner, is called a Jack Ketch. In the Amsterdam Library, there is a copy of a report of his famous trial, translated from the Lisbon edition. So this old man, he was accused of sorcery and illicit intercourse with the devil, who had disclosed to him futurity. So this devil demon was given him information about the future. The prophecy imparted by the arch enemy to the poor visionary Jesuit is reported in the following terms. The culprit had confessed that the demon, under the form of the Blessed Virgin, having commanded him to write the life of Antichrist. So apparently the demon appeared as the Blessed Virgin. And apparently I've shown in previous videos from South America to Virginia, a lot of places around the world, the statues of the Virgin Mary are found to be bleeding real blood, etc., in tears. What are we to believe? Should we want them to put that statue of the devil in Detroit and on a state building in Oklahoma? I think not. Should we want the menorah, the seven candlestick symbol, to be on the window of a major shopping store at Christmas instead of Christmas or symbols of Christianity? I think not. But there's a purpose why they're doing this. That's what spiritualism is. If you believe in good angels and bad angels, then I suppose spirits, there would be good spirits and bad spirits. And even Jesus was casting out unclean spirits and demons. But they don't want us to know that. They don't want people to be religious. They want people to believe in this progressive liberal thinking, pansexualism, transgenderism, homosexual marriage, and normalization of these things. It's not an accident. And what will they do if back then during the Inquisition, the late 1700s, the good people, the poor people, the people who did not go along with the ruling authorities of the church were the ones who were murdered? And apparently during the prophesied end times, the people who do not accept this Lucifer demonic entity, this Antichrist as their leader, and swear allegiance to this thing, that's what those guillotines are for. Repeating history. The bad people weren't the ones who were punished and murdered. And in a lot of cases, it was a sneaky way of killing good people, especially people with a lot of wealth. And then the Vatican and the authorities could seize all that wealth. And I thought, well, that's what happened with the Civil War in the United States. All those plantations in the South and other properties. And in recessions and depressions, they do that on purpose so people lose everything. And World War I and World War II and all those countries. How many wealthy people were targeted and all their wealth seized? Russian Revolution, Chinese Revolution, French Revolution. It appears to be the case. Anyways, so the Virgin appeared, a demon appeared as the Virgin, and told him that he, Malagirida, was the second John, but more clear, John the Evangelist, and that there were to be 3 Antichrists, and that the last should be born at Milan of a monk and a nun in the year 1920, and that he would marry Proserpine, one of the infernal furies, etc. Now remember, this material is not to be construed to be truth and gospel, something you should take to the bank and believe. It comes from H P Blavatsky, the creator of the Theosophist Society, the forerunner of the New Age material, Rosicrucians, Freemasons, and other secret society, mystery religion, the Kabbalists, it's all mentioned in here, and created the Lucifer magazine, the Lucifer Publishing Company. So why would these invisible beings dictate this material to her to put in this big thick book? And this is volume 2. So it's 2 of these books. And then I got the another set of books called The Secret Doctrine, which were equally as large, and many other books, and even Lucifer magazine, Theosophist magazines, and so much more material. Rosicrucian magazines, New Age magazines by the Freemasons, and so much more. You can go on the internet, look up the Illuminati websites on witchcraft. And if you do look up witchcraft, I really suggest you don't look up witchcraft holidays. You're going to see some pictures that are going to make you sick. You don't want to know what they do. I just read a little bit of what they do. The prophecy is to be verified 43 years hence. So the prophecies that were predicted by these demons or beings apparently were fulfilled years later, which is common knowledge. Many biblical prophecies have been fulfilled. Even were all the children born of monks and nuns really to become antichrists, if allowed to grow up maturely, the fact would seem far less deplorable than the discoveries made in so many convents when the foundations have been removed for some reason. So I do know that Theophilus Society and Helena Blavatsky's materials and the New Age, they are anti-Christian. And she's talking about here that at many of these convents, if they dug in the cellar or under the pond, they would find numerous baby skeletons. Apparently the nuns and the priests or monks were having sex and killing the children. And I don't doubt that at all. That doesn't make all Christians bad, because these leaders are evil. If the assertion of Luther is to be disbelieved on account of his hatred for popery, then we may name discoveries of the same character made quite recently in Austria, and Russian Poland. Luther speaks of a fish pond at Rome, situated near a convent of nuns, which, having been cleared out by the order of Pope Gregory, disclosed at the bottom over 6,000 infant skulls, and a nunnery at Neuburg in Austria, whose foundations were searched and disclosed the same relics of celibacy and chastity. So were they performing some satanic rituals, sacrificing a child? Or were they just getting rid of the babies born to nuns because of the illicit sex? And there's something here in French I can't understand. Meekly repeated the scarlet-robed cardinals. So the red-robed cardinals, to avoid the spilling of blood which horrified them, they instituted the Holy Inquisition. If, as the occultists maintain, and science hath confirms, our most trifling acts and thoughts are indelibly impressed upon the eternal mirror of the astral ether. So it is important, and I believe this is true, to get your mind right, my mind right, all of us. This stuff that they're trying to use, information and New Age material to change the paradigm, the propaganda, it's a lie. And if people believe the lie in transgenderism, pansexualism, sex with anything, and all these other liberal progressive ideas, and they're talking about this information indelibly impressed upon the eternal mirror of the astral ether. So if it is a battle for souls, and these entities that control our world want to destroy our souls, or have our souls join them on the dark side, then they would want people to think with this new thinking and not care about the fact that they're killing Syrians today. They're killing Palestinian people today. The economic destruction in Venezuela. Argentina, they recently crashed the money supply, the dollar. And when they do it here in the USA. So whoever these entities are, they do plan on chaos and anarchy. And even President George Bush Sr. said, out of chaos and anarchy will come the New World Order. Then they give us the Hunger Games movie. This is the stuff these people do and think. Spiritualism does exist. We're all spiritual beings, but we have a choice. And I'm not trying to preach. I'm reading this, and it's a little bit concerning. There must be somewhere in the boundless realm of the unseen universe to imprint of a curious picture. It is that of a gorgeous standard waving in the heavenly breeze at the foot of the great white throne of the Almighty. On its crimson damask face a cross and the symbol of the Son of God who died for mankind, with an olive branch on one side and a sword stained to the hilt with human gore on the other. A legend selected from the Psalms, emblazoned in golden letters, reading thus: Excurge domen el judica casum mean. I don't know what that means. For such appears the standard of the Inquisition on a photograph in our possession from an original procured at the Emporium of Madrid. So I did look up some interesting pictures, which I shall share right now. Some pictures from a website, the Brain Police. Think about that. The Brain Police.blogspot.com. Pictures from a revolution, the French Revolution. Pictures from a revolution, March 16th, 2014. So what do you believe? Plenty of serpents there. Stanford University released a vast online collection of documents and images from the French Revolution. 14,000 high-resolution images. So you can go look up the document, thebrainpolice.blogspot.com. Here's a castle that looks like it's all blown apart. Some eerie images. A revolution. Now think about that. They talk about a world revolution now. This global new world order. How will they bring it about? It's got some heavenly beings. Some kind of glowing building in the sky. Something with the Statue of Liberty with a thing in her arms throwing off lightning. A king with a sword. So I had to think this through. Another one here is apparently the leader of the French Revolution or the Reformation sent some warriors to Haiti because of the white people there who were in charge of the island were trying to be separatists. But notice the demon in the sky and the pyramid above the leader's head, and the black man. Remember, there is a pyramid on the back of the $1 bill, U.S. $1 bill. Pyramid has 3 fleur-de-lis on it. The 3 pebbled flower, which is also now the symbol for the Boy Scouts. That's odd. And here they have this man with wings, with his hand over a woman and his hand over, I guess, 2 women. But he definitely has the wings. Are we talking about Lucifer? And another one here with this guy holding something with a stone on it, like an emerald, and lightning coming from the stone, and it's zapping people, and the other person holding her shoulder. So apparently she's a figure from like the Statue of Liberty, holding this lantern, throwing off lightning, like the Statue of Liberty holds a torch. And who's ever holding her shoulder has a lion on a leash. And it was the French Freemasons who gave to the United States the Statue of Liberty. There's more to it than what people know. Apparently, this is a kind of a crazy picture, but this leader, part of the Inquisition, the Reformation, is relieving himself on human skulls. And here is a whole platoon of people bent over, relieving themselves on a bunch of people. Crazy? What kind of insanity was this? And here we have the guillotine and the crown. Just saying, go online, check on YouTube and other websites to find out about the 30,000 guillotines the military of the United States, the government has ordered, the many FEMA camps, the ever-increasing cell phone towers every 1 mile apart, apparently permeating all of our air with microwaves. And if you don't know how microwaves work, it's a short wave. You have to use a microscope to see an antenna that would capture the wave. It's so small. It's the size of a blood cell or an oxygen molecule. So if they have wavelengths in the 5G network that are the size of a oxygen molecule or a blood cell in your body, and many other variables, they can tweak it and fine-tune it, just like you would do a radio to tune in a channel. But if they get the right exact frequency to the oxygen molecule around you, or in you, it would destroy all of the oxygen molecules. And the same thing with a frequency of a white blood cell or whatever. It would heat up them if they're the exact size. That's called resonization. It's like if you have two tuning forks and you twang one, twang, and you just hold the other one. If it's the exact frequency, the other one will start going twang, because exact frequencies resonate and the signal gets induced into the object of the same size. And water, as we all know, is a conductor of energy, electricity. So a little thinking, go online and look up the dangerous 5G network. And then the heavy metals dumped in the sky with the chemtrailing just ensures that our bodies are permeated with more heavy metals. And the same size of those metals are some of the frequencies that they can turn on. So is there another preferred way to reduce the population on the planet than this? Apparently, bashing a human and throwing it into a fire. Remember, I'm reading about spiritualism and entities that these people apparently communicate with and worship. What can we expect? Apparently, some people here are eating human flesh and some other horrific roasting one baby in a fire. French Revolution, the Inquisition. All kinds of demons, guillotines. So Stanford University released 14,000 pictures with this kind of material. Bonaparte, French Revolution. And there's a lot of talk about a world revolution. Moving on. Remember, this information I'm reading from is ISIS Unveiled. Helena Blavatsky, the forerunner of the organization for the Theosophist Society New Age material. Some kind of religious information from the Orient, India, makes up this New Age material. And these invisible beings, called masters, also called angels, were dictating to Helena Blavatsky what to write about and what to write, and commanding her what to do. And these big, thick books are the result. And they have not stopped in their pursuit of destroying Christianity. It's happening before my eyes in the last 10 years. I've seen the 7 candlestick menorah on the shopping store window and the disappearance of Christianity symbolism. And we've seen many weird things, and the rise of Israel, and even President Donald Trump acknowledging the U.S. recognizes Jerusalem as its capital, 9/11 in the destruction of all the major countries in the Middle East, and all kinds of preparation in America and the world for some event. And the fear just keeps coming. Economic collapse, droughts, floods, pole shift, World War III, plagues, sustainability, running out of oil, prices going crazy. They know what they're doing. I suppose we ought to know what we're doing. Under the Christian standard, remember, this is the beings dictating to Helena Blavatsky what to write about, and according to the Freemasonic material and Blavatsky's material that I've read in the past, they are anti-Christian. So this information is meant to help destroy Christianity, maybe? And who was the ones in the church that were performing all this evil? It wasn't the average good person, whether they were Christian or Muslim or atheist or anything, or Hindu or Buddhist. It was the secret societies controlling our world. Under the Christian standard, in the brief space of 14 years, Thomas Tukwama, the confessor of Queen Elizabeth, burned over 10,000 persons and sentenced to torture 80,000 more. Orobo, a well-known writer who was detained so long in prison and who hardly escaped the flames of the Inquisition, immortalized this institution in his works when once at the library in Holland, at Liberty in Holland. He found no better argument against the Holy Church than to embrace the Judaic faith and submit even to circumcision. In the Cathedral of Saragossa, says a writer on the Inquisition, is the tomb of a famous inquisitor. 6 pillars surround the tomb, and to each is chained a Moor, as preparatory to being burnt. So the Moors were some dark-skinned people who were living in Portugal and Spain. So they were burning these Moors. On this, St. Fox ingenuously observed, if ever the Jack Ketch, the executioner, of any country should be rich enough to have a splendid tomb, this might serve as an excellent model. So these people who kill so many people, I've seen this in my research, but they make these people famous. And we the people don't see through the deception. To make it complete, however, the builders of the tomb ought not to have omitted a bas-relief of the famous horse, which was burnt for sorcery and witchcraft. Granger tells the story. Remember, this is invisible entities, masters, angels, dictating to Helena Blavatsky what to write. You have to remember that. So they burnt a horse, accusing it of sorcery and witchcraft. The poor animal had been taught to tell the spots upon cards and the hour of the day by the watch. The horse and owner were both indicted by the sacred office for dealing with the devil and were burned with great ceremony at Lisbon in 1601 as wizards. So the guy taught his horse how to tell what time it was. I guess he would stomp his hoof when he saw it was 6 o'clock, 6 times maybe. Or stomp it 6 times if he saw 6 spots on a card. Crazy stuff. This immortal institution of Christianity did not remain without its Dante to sing its praise. Morcido, a Portuguese Jesuit, says the author of Demonology, book on demonology, has discovered the origin of the Inquisition in the terrestrial paradise and presumes to allege that God was the first who began the functions of an inquisitor over Cain and the workmen of Babel. Nowhere during the Middle Ages were the arts of magic and sorcery more practiced than by the clergy than in Spain or Portugal. The Moors were profoundly versed in occult sciences. So some dark-skinned people from the Middle East, Muslims, were profoundly versed in the occult sciences. And I know all over the known world back then, the Kabbalistic Jews were well versed on the occult sciences. Seville and Salamanca were once upon a time the great schools of magic. The Kabbalist, says it right here, of the later town were skilled in all the abstruse sciences and knew the virtues of precious stones and other minerals, and had extracted from alchemy its most profound secrets. The authentic documents pertaining to the great trial of Marcial d'Arcane during the regency of Marie de Massini disclose that the unfortunate woman perished through the fault of the priest, with whom, like a true Italian, she surrendered herself. She was accused by the people of Paris of sorcery because it had been asserted that she had used, after the ceremony of exorcism, newly killed white cocks, roosters. Believing herself constantly bewitched, and being in delicate health, the merchantile had the ceremony of exorcism publicly applied to herself in the church of the Augustinians. As to the birds, she used them as an appellation to the forehead on the account of the dreadful pains in the head, and had been advised to do so by Maltito, the Jewish physician of the Queen, and by the Italian priest. So the Jewish physician to the queen advised this lady to kill a rooster, apply the blood to her head, something like that, and she was burnt at the stake for practicing occult sorcery. In the 16th century, the cure of Bogota, of the Diocese of Corona, Spain, became the world's wonder for his magical powers. His most extraordinary feat consisted, it was said, in transporting himself to any distant country, witnessing political and other events, and then returning home to predict them in his own country. Wow, I made book reviews on Tim Rifat's book, Remote Viewing, David Morehouse's book, Remote Viewing. Jim Mars wrote about remote viewing and other psychic and occult activities. And here she's talking about this in 1888. So he would leave his body. He had a familiar demon who served him faithfully for long years. He had a familiar demon who served him, says the Chronicle, but the curé turned ungrateful and cheated him. Having been appraised by his demon of a conspiracy against the Pope's life, in consequence of an intrigue of the latter with a fair lady, the curé transported himself to Rome in his double, of course, and thus saved his holiness' life. So his demon told him the Pope was in threat of being murdered, apparently because he was having an affair with a woman, fair lady. So he transported himself there in his spiritual entity and saved the holiness life. After which he repented, confessed his sins to the gallant Pope, and got absolution. On his return, he was delivered as a matter of form into the custody of the inquisitors of Lugano, but was acquitted and restored to his liberty very soon. So a lot of instances here, people into the occult, sorcery, who were not put to the stake or put to the guillotine. But who was put to the guillotine or put to the stake or tortured, killed, murdered? Friar Pietro, a Dominican monk of the 14th century, the magician who presented the famous Dr. Eugenio Travalli, a physician attached to the house of the Admiral of Castile, with a demon named Zacul. So Friar, a Dominican monk, has control of a demon named Zacul. Won his fame through the subsequent trial of Travalli. The procedure and circumstances attendant upon the extraordinary trial are described in the original papers preserved in the archives of the Inquisition. The Cardinal of Volterra and the Cardinal of Santa Cruz both saw and communicated with this demon Ziculi, who proved during the whole of Travalli's life to be a pure, kind, and elemental spirit, doing many beneficent actions and remaining faithful to the physician to the last hour of his life. So this being was remaining faithful to the physician. And just a reminder, the reason I make these videos is I'm trying to figure out WTH. What the heck is going on? Why would they be bringing us the really weird activity like the tunnel opening ceremony in Switzerland, or the statue of Shiva out in front of CERN, and so much more? So I continue to read these books and put two and two together. Is there a God? I grew up Christian Catholic. It appears to me, through all the material I've gone over, Jesus is real enough, documented well enough, and it seems that the opposition to Jesus, and including the Mohammedans, the attack on the Arabs in the Middle East. Let's not forget that. That's not an attack on Christianity. That's an attack on the Arabs. And according to Aleister Crowley, the Book of the Law, do as thou wilt, they don't even like the Hindus or the Buddhists. So what are these evil sorcery forces? And what is it that we should know that they don't want us to know? So let me finish up this video. Even the Inquisition acquitted Travella on that account. I guess his spiritual entity was really friendly. And although an immortality of fame was ensured to him by the satire of the Cavortes, neither Travella nor the monk Petro are fictitious heroes, but historical personages recorded in the ecclesiastical documents of Rome and Sunia. So these aren't fictional characters. They're recorded in the records of the Vatican, in which town the trial of the physician took place January 29th, 1530. So there's nothing new here. Does anybody really want to believe that they were into this stuff and somewhere along the line they gave it up? I know during the 1840s, right up until the beginning of World War II, the 1940s, it wasn't uncommon to find all these magazines on the magazine racks in local stores. The topic of psychic researches and seances and ghosts was very popular. Then after World War II, it kind of disappeared, and the gray aliens and reptilians, UFO and aliens became really popular. Isn't that a switch? The book of Dr. W.G. Sodan of Stuttgart has become as famous in Germany as Boden's book on demonology in France. It is the most complete German treatise on witchcraft of the 16th century, 1500s. One interested to learn the secret machinery underlying these thousands of legal murders perpetrated by the clergy who pretended to believe in the devil and succeeded in making others believe in him will find it divulged in the above-mentioned work. So remember, this is Helena Blavatsky writing this at the behest of some invisible beings, the same person who had Lucifer magazine and Lucifer Publishing Company, later changed to Lucas, which also means light, and even the Freemasons having the New Age magazine. So you have to pay attention with discernment when they're trying to deceive us or sugarcoat something, mislead us. A lot of deception is 90% truth and 10 plus or minus percent deception. It's the perfect deception with so much truth. The true origin of the daily accusations and death sentences for sorcery are cleverly traced by personnel and political enemies. So a lot of people who were killed during the Inquisition can cleverly be traced to personal and political enemies. And above all, to the hatred of Catholics towards the Protestants. The crafty work of the Jesuits is seen on every page of the bloody tragedies. The crafty work of the Jesuits is seen at every page of the bloody tragedies. Remember, we have a Jesuit Pope now. And it is in Bamberg and Würzburg where these worthy sons of Loyola were most powerful at the time, and that the cases of witchcraft were most numerous. So Loyola, Ignatius Loyola, apparently of Jewish descent, in the Portugal and Spain, somehow had a meeting with the Pope and the Pope allowed the creation of the Jesuits of Jewish descent into probably the Kabbalah, which a lot of Kabbalists were accused of sorcery, which was another word for witchcraft. You can connect the dots here. On the next page, we give a curious list of some victims, many of whom were children between the ages of 7 and 8 years, and they were Protestants. So the Catholic Church did not like anyone going against its dogma and trying to promote to the people that the Pope was God's representative on planet Earth. And the group of those people were the Protestants, and many of the Jewish people, not all of them, who were Jewish people, have a historical reputation of being involved in revolutions. That's a fact. That's in the Encyclopedia Judaica and many other books. And one of those revolutions or revolts was the Protestants against the Catholic Church. So if you were the Catholic Pope and the bishops and cardinals and you didn't like people attacking the church, you could accuse them of being a witch. Burn them at the stake. Did they do that? Of the multitudes of persons who perished at the stake in Germany during the first half of the 17th century for sorcery, the only crime of many was their attachment to the religion of Luther, Martin Luther, says T. Wright, and the petty princes were not unwilling to seize upon any pretense to fill their coffers. Now remember, this is Helena Blavatsky writing Isis Unveiled, and she admits in her diaries and her personal letters and that she is not the one who wrote this stuff. She had no way of knowing all this stuff, but these invisible beings from places like the Himalayas or Tibet or these brotherhoods all over the world were either leaving their body visiting her, called masters, or were deceased entities, spiritual entities, fallen angels, whatever, dictating information to her, deceased people who were famous in the past. What is the truth? The persons prosecuted were those whose property was a matter of consideration. So apparently a lot of people who were following Martin Luther, who were joining the Protestants and who were wealthy, were targets of the church. I don't doubt that at all. Like I said, World War I, World War II, 9/11, money was involved. The persons prosecuted and whose property was a matter of consideration. At Bamberg, as well as Würzburg, the bishop was the sovereign prince in his dominions. The Prince-Bishop John George II, who ruled Bamberg, after several unsuccessful attempts to root out Lutheranism, distinguished his reign by a series of sanctuary witch trials which disgraced the annals of that city. We may form some notion of the proceedings of this worthy from the statement of the most authentic historians, that between 1625 and 1630, no less than 900 trials took place in 2 courts at Bamberg and Zeil, and a pamphlet published at Bamberg by authority in 1659 states the number of persons whom Bishop John George had caused to be burned for sorcery to have been about 600. So what will be the excuse when they bring about some catastrophe, World War III or a nuclear terror attack, and declare world martial law? What will be their excuse to round up people who will be imprisoned, eliminated even by drones, turned off with microchips, frequencies causing them to have heart attacks? Just saying, it does seem like something is looming. There are many musicians these days writing songs about the looming end of the world. So it might behoove the rest of us to wake up and maybe possibly save our world by waking up and quit being ignorant and stupid. Getting demons and daggers and all kinds of symbols tattooed all over our bodies and dressing up or painting ourselves up to look like Pokemon characters can't be good for the human race, I think. But most people are not aware they're being mind controlled. With the cartoons, like I said earlier, the TV programming. Regretting that space should prevent our giving one of the most curious lists in the world of burned witches, we will nevertheless make a few extracts from the original record as printed in Hamburg's Biblia Magica. One glance at this horrible catalog of murders in Christ's name is sufficient to discover that out of the 162 persons burned, more than one half of them are designated as strangers. And strangers, the IE, really means Protestants. So if you became and joined the Protestants, you were called a stranger. In this hospitable town, and on the other half we find 34 children, the oldest of whom was 14, and the youngest an infant child of Dr. Schultz. To make the catalog shorter, we will present of each of the 29 burnings, but the most remarkable. So the first burning were four persons: the wife of Libeler, Old Anchor's widow, the wife of Gutbelt, and the wife of Hawker. Second burning, the old wife of Bueller, two strange women, which means they were Protestants. The next third burning was Transbuller the minstrel, a musician, four wives of citizens. The fourth burning was a strange man, another Protestant. In the fifth burning, an eminent shopkeeper, the wife of Bernach, a senator. The sixth burning, a fat tailor's wife, a strange man, a strange woman, Protestant. The seventh burning, a strange girl of 12 years old, a Protestant. A strange man, a strange woman, Protestant. A strange bailiff, Protestant. Three strange women, Protestants. Eighth burning, Bernach, a senator, the fattest citizen in Weisberg. So earlier, his wife was burned. The fifth burnings. A strange man, Protestant. Two strange women, Protestant. Ninth burning, a strange man, a mother and a daughter, Protestant. Senator, a very rich man. A strange man, a strange woman, Protestant. 11th burning, two women, two men. 12th, two strange women, Protestant. So they use the word strange to mean Protestant. 13th burning, a little girl 9 or 10 years old, a younger girl, her sister. 14th burning, the mother of two little girls before mentioned, a girl 24 years old. The 15th burning, two persons, a boy 12 years of age in the first school, a woman. The 16th burning, 6 persons, a boy of 10 years age. 17th burning, a boy 11 years old, a mother and daughter. And I'm not going to read the rest of these, but I will show the picture. So apparently they were using the Inquisition and the accusation of witchcraft to eliminate opposition to the Catholic Church, the Protestants, who were assisted in this revolutionary activity by many Jewish people. And of course, during history, it was the Jewish magicians and Jewish financiers who were supporting and backing the Vatican, like the Rothschilds are probably the banksters for the Vatican right now. I've made a video on that book. So you can pause your computer and read it if you really want to see what it says. Alright, and then the last one, 28th burning, the infant daughter of Dr. Schultz. So definitely attacking people and their families. a blind girl, 29th burning, a fat noble lady, and a doctor of divinity. And it says here, summary, strange men and women, i.e. Protestants, citizens, apparently all wealthy people, and boys, girls, and little children, they were burning at the stake. There were, says Wright, little girls from 7 to 10 years of age among the witches, and 7 to 20 of them were convicted and burnt. At some of the other brand or burnings, the number brought to trial in these terrible proceedings were so great that they were treated with little consideration, and that it was usual not even to take the trouble of setting down their names, and they were cited as the accused at number 1, number 2, and number 3, and so on. The Jesuits took their confessions in private. What room is there in a theology which exacts such holocaust as these to appease the bloody appetites of its priest for the following gentle words? I guess this is what it says in the Bible. Suffer little children, and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. Even so, it is not the will of your Father that one of these little ones should perish. So do not forbid the children to come unto God. But whose shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hung around his neck, and that he were drowned in the depths of the sea. So these people who control our world, the people who are apparently now are committing a lot of false flags involving children, Sandy Hook, the Oklahoma City bombing had a daycare in it, and many other buildings. Children seem to be the target. Did this butchery in the name of their Moloch god prevent these treasure hunters from resorting to the black art themselves? Not in the least, for in no class were such consulters of familiar spirits more numerous than among the clergy during the 15th, 16th, and 17th century. So the clergy during the 15th, 16th, and 17th century, the 1400s, 1500s, and 1600s, were consultors of familiar spirits. I remember a lot of people are watching channeled material these days. It's quite popular on the internet. Esther Hicks channeling Abraham, Lee Carroll, Cryon, Jane Roberts was channeling Seth, and so many others. I've made videos on that, and I'm going to continue to look at that. True, there were some Catholic priests among the victims, but though these were generally accused of having been led into practices too dreadful to be described, it was not so. In the 29 burnings above catalogued, we find the names of 12 vicars, 4 canons, and 2 doctors of divinity burnt alive. But we have only to turn to such works as were published at the time to assure ourselves that each popist priest executed was accused of damnable heresy, a tendency towards the Reformation, a crime more heinous far than sorcery. So heresy, not following the dogma of the Catholic Church, was considered more heinous than sorcery. And I suppose, like I said, history repeats itself. However they're going to bring about, or try to bring about, this global world order, what event, could be today, could be tomorrow, it could be past my lifetime. But there's so much preparations, so much activities. I notice on my computer that there's no doubt in my mind that my activities, watching videos, making videos, even my business, is being hindered. My computer will, on certain videos I watch or things I look up, the search won't come about. And it's been getting worse every day lately. And other people are talking about the ever-increasing actions taken by the elites because of the awakening that seems to be happening by a lot of people. And those cell phone towers with the looming 5G weaponized microwave systems are coming online every day. And lately, the past few days, they've been dumping a horrendous amount of chemicals in the sky. And then President Donald Trump met with the leader of North Korea. That's interesting. And with the G7, told them that he's going to cut off all the funding and free trade agreements because the balance sheets are way off balance with the USA. And in that opinion, I agree with him. But how did it get there in the first place? And what's the reason for him doing that? To bring about the vicious anger. And if you go look up President Donald Trump's mansion in New York City, to me it looks exactly like a Freemasonic lodge. And the round columns inside. It's nothing like anything you've ever seen if you go see it. It's got the pillars and the statues. Looks like an Illuminati decor. So I just wonder if he's not part of some priesthood of one of these secret societies. And I don't say that lightly, because President John Quincy Adams, I made a video on his book, Letters on Freemasonry, in the 1800s. Talks about that the Masonic Party, which controls the United States, would never allow another non-Mason to be president or a leading senator or representative. So there is a control of our system by these people. So if you're not one of them, you're not going to get up there. And even President Donald Trump's daughter married a Jewish man, converted to Judaism, and his son married a Jewish woman converting to Judaism, and recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. It's just some strange things going on, and I think that this global world order is being brought about through propaganda and deception. And they're appeasing us, when they brought President Obama to us and Believe in Change, wrote the book on the audacity to hope. The liberals and the other people were all finally saying yes, and this came right after George Bush Jr., who so many people hated, and he came after Clinton, which so many people were tired of his shenanigans. So they keep flip-flopping us. And we had a choice between Hillary Clinton and President Donald Trump. And I think it's the most two bizarre choices. And then we're getting all this Illuminati satanic ritual activity. And then I read this stuff here. What are we to think? What do they want us to think? We refer those who would learn how the Catholic clergy united duty with pleasure in the manner of exorcisms, revenge, and treasure hunting. And remember, these are spiritual beings dictating to H P Blavatsky the material for ISIS Unveiled. And remember, ISIS is supposed to be the big threat in the Middle East right now. And remember, it was Al-Qaeda that was supposed to be responsible for 9/11. And remember, it was the CIA and the Pentagon and the other elites of the Illuminati, Zionist, Israel, Mossad, creating the Al-Qaeda to battle Russia when it was in the Middle East. So who created Al-Qaeda? So they use these mercenary paid soldiers, and then they kind of think we the people will never wake up, not become aware that 9/11 was a planned event. I was thinking about this the other day. In 1986, when they had the first bombing in the ground floor of one of the Twin Towers, they had to have an inspection after the bombing to renew the insurance. If you get a house fire and the firemen come and put it out, the insurance company is going to demand that you get an inspection before they issue you a new policy. That's just how it is. But anyways, when they had the bombing in the bottom floor of one of the Twin Towers, they had to have an inspection. So they had to have engineers and architects sign off on the buildings. And they went inside the elevator shafts. I'm paraphrasing here. This is research I've discovered years ago. And found that the buildings were faultily constructed. Something to do with the columns and the pinnings and everything. That the report was these buildings were going to fall down on their own anyways. And this had to be covered up. So they blocked off one floor in the Twin Towers, maybe both buildings, and they had architects and engineers on that floor working on a fix to the problem. But apparently the end story is they couldn't find a fix for it, and so they couldn't get insurance. And just prior to the 911 event, the buildings were sold to a Silverman, and the insurance they acquired was not building insurance, but terrorism insurance that they could get. You don't need a building inspection for terrorism insurance. So these are the people that are connected with the banking system and control our economy and this education system and so much more. The health system, bringing us modified foods, genetically modified, mercury in vaccines, fluoride in water, destroying Christianity, and so much more. Messing with the minds of people, especially our youth. And then I'm reading this stuff, knowing that they want to fulfill some kind of prophecy. So we refer to who would learn how the clergy, Catholic clergy, united duty with pleasure in the matter of exorcisms, revenge, and treasure hunting. So a lot of it is about money, controlling the world's resources. I don't think too many people are going to doubt that. They promote sustainability and so much more. They control the weather, apparently according to geoengineering, Dane Wigington, and so many other websites. And they're working towards weaponizing with the radio waves, microwaves, the whole world. So Volume 2, Chapter 1 of W. Hewitt's History of the Supernatural, in what came to be called the Fumological Occulta et Vera, all the forms of aljuration and conjuration were laid down, says this veteran writer. He then proceeds to give a long description of the favorite modus operandi, the dogma el ritual of de la hante magic of the late Eliphas Levi, treated with so much abuse and contempt by de Mossax, tells nothing of the weird ceremonies and practices by what was practiced legally and with the tactic, if not open consent of the church, by the priest of the Middle Ages. The exorcist priest entered a circle at midnight. He was clad in a new surplice and had a consecrated band hanging from the neck, covered with the sacred characters. He wore on the head a tall pointed cap, on the front of which was written in Hebrew the holy word, the tetragrammation, the ineffable name, supposedly some kind of special name for God that gives them magical powers. It was written with a new pen dipped in the blood of a white dove. What the exorcist most yearned after was the release of miserable spirits, which haunt spots where hidden treasure lie. The exorcist sprinkled the circle with the blood of a black lamb and a white pigeon. The priest had to adjure the evil spirits of hell. Archeront, Meggoth, Asmodee, Beelzebub, I think that's another name for the devil, Belial, another name for the devil, and all the damned souls in the mighty names of Jehovah, Adoni, Elohan, and Tazaboth, which later was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who dwelt in the Urim and the Thummim. Remember, this is Isis Unveiled, master beings in spiritual form, whether deceased or remote viewing, commanded Helena Blavatsky to write this, gave her the information, let her look at manuscripts, dictated, and there were many of these spiritual beings giving her this information, one after another, every day for years. When the damned souls flung in the face of the exorcist that he was a sinner and could not get the treasure from them, the priest sorcerer had to reply that all his sins were washed out in the blood of Christ. And he bid them depart as cursed ghosts and damned flies. When the exorcist dislodged them at last, the poor soul was comforted in the name of the Savior and consigned to the care of good angels, the people who control our world, who were less powerful, we must think, than the exorcising Catholic worthies. And the rescued treasure, of course, was secured for the church. And remember, the Theosophist Society, like the Freemasons, and of course, Zionist Jewish people, remember it was the Jewish Pharisees who had Jesus Christ crucified. They cannot let that stand. They have to destroy Christianity. They have to discredit it. They have to eliminate it from the minds of we the people. And Jesus, of course, taught and added the commandment, ye are to love one another. Treat others how you want to be treated. Go look it up. These people are bringing us 9/11, World War I, World War II, French revolutions, and so much horrific death and suffering, I don't think is what people really want. Certain days, as adds Howitt, are laid down in the calendar of the church as the most favorable for the practice of exorcism, and if the devils are difficult to drive, a fume of sulfa, asafoetida, bear's gall, and rue is recommended. So apparently that's some really stinky stuff, which was presumed would outstench even devils. So we have evil people controlling our world right now, the banking system and so much more, planning on a global world order, and I think they would probably outstench even devils. And I am aware, I was watching a video this morning, it's dangerous to talk about the truth. And I am aware that what we watch on our computers, books we buy, what we say, what we do, we're being monitored more and more every day. And they use it against you. Some Alex Jones and others are saying that President Donald Trump is doing what he was doing because they're blackmailing him. He has to do it. This is the church, and this is the priesthood, which in the 19th century pays 5,000 priests to teach the people of the United States the infidelity of science and the infallibility of the Bishop of Rome. And I am aware that Helena Blavatsky was an enemy of Christianity. And when you listen to the channeled materials by these famous people whose popularity is growing every day, they say that Christianity is outdated and no longer needed. You can see some common themes. So I'm going to stop reading there. There's so much more here. Just wanted to share some of this material that maybe will answer some questions to what is going on in our reality. Why are all these crazy things going on? What do they plan? How ruthless are they? And should we allow them to destroy Christianity? Should we allow them to teach people, and especially our youth, there's no God. Don't believe in God. You can do whatever you want. You can have a male lover this week and a female lover next week, and heck, the week after that, you can have an orgy. Do as thou wilt. Thank you for watching my video, Rick Miracle reporting.